Lately, our homes have experienced more of us. More dishes, more flushes,
Mom!
and more shower time concerts. After 50 years of Encores, Mr. Rooter Plumbing Service professionals are equipped to handle anything. We're your neighbor you can call anytime, and we'll be there because we've been here all along. Mr. Rooter Plumbing, a neighborly company. Visit mrrooter.com today.
This is a CBC podcast.
Believe it or not, we're already at the halfway point for Tokyo 2020, and the Canadians have made it to the podium 11 times already. To talk about the action so far and the must-see events to come, we're joined by Ed Kleiman. He's a freelance sports reporter. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning.
So 1 week in, and unbelievably so, 1 week to go. What do you think of Canada's performance so far?
Wow, it has been, I think a tale of two genders really jumps out at you. The men have yet to reach a podium, and the women are just doing amazingly well all over the place, winning all of Canada's medals, well into double digits now and climbing every day. So they're really carrying the load, and just some phenomenal performances in the pool, on the judo mat, in softball, and then last night with just, to me, the moment of the games for Canada with that dramatic win in the women's eights in rowing. Really, it has been really special what the Canadian women have done.
Now, one of those women is Penny Oleksiak. She made history this week, becoming Canada's most decorated Summer Olympian. What do you make of her career and what she could achieve going forward? Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, she is going to end up being the most decorated Canadian Olympian ever, not just tied for it, because, it could happen just in a couple of days. Still one event to go, a medley relay, where the Canadian women look pretty strong. And if not, the next Olympiad's only 3 years away, remember, because of COVID and the delay. We have 5 years between them. That means only 3 of the next one. She'll only be 24 years old. She's already talked about being hyper-motivated for it, so who knows how many medals she's going to end up with. But just to reach here 6 is pretty phenomenal. And I think there's some neat symmetry here because we've got Cindy Klassen, the speed skater, 6 Winter Olympic medals. We've got Clara Hughes, the most rare of athletes, winning medals in both the summer and the winter games, 4 in the winter, 2 in the summer in cycling and speed skating. And then Penny in the summertime in swimming. 3 amazing athletes that are going to go down in the record books. And, from a Canadian perspective, we're kind of spoiled to have that kind of legacy from those athletes. And I know it's inspiring a lot of young women. And, who knows, maybe 20, 30 years from now, someone we've never heard of is going to even exceed those. But, pretty amazing what we're seeing from Penny.
I thought it was amazing to see this message from Clara Hughes welcoming Penny to the 6 Medal Club, a very exclusive club.
Oh, absolutely. And, Clara Hughes, I mean, again, I mentioned, she won medals in both the summer and the Winter Olympic Games. I don't know if we're ever going to see that again from any athlete in any country. It's so hard to do. Yeah. So when she offers her congratulations, it carries a lot of weight. It means a lot. She's a phenom.
Of course. Now, which Canadian athletes or teams have stood out for you? I know we've spoken about Penny, but others?
Such a long list. I mentioned what the women's age did in rowing. That was an incredible performance. The women's softball team. Softball had not been in the Olympics since 2008, and here we have this team hyper-motivated to do really well, and they come through with a medal and get some redemption all those years later. I think that was really memorable. Mm-hmm. I take a look at Jessica Klumpkat in judo, who won the first judo medal for Canada. She came in as a world champion, number 1 in the world in Japan, where beating the Japanese is super, super hard. She came up a little short of the gold, but still got the medal, which was great to see. And, that's just, again, there's so many examples of such impressive performances that I think years from now we're going to look back on what the Canadian women did and really see it as a watershed moment.
Was there a moment that stood out for you, like one moment that you'll remember forever from 2020?
Again, every day you have so many, and you have recency bias during your middle of it. But Maggie McNeil in the 100-meter butterfly, getting it started for Canada in the pool, coming from way behind to outtouch a super strong field, and then she didn't really know where she had finished and had to look up and could barely see the scoreboard because she didn't have her contact lenses in, and eventually found out that, she was first and just had an amazing mini celebration there in the water. And I think that set the tone, both for the women and in the pool. And I think that certainly just sticks in my mind, and I know I'm never going to forget that.
What's funny, Ed, you're going to love this. At home now, when we can't seem to read a label on anything, we call it the Maggie McNeil squint. So,
so it's going to be a moment that's going to be remembered for a lot of different reasons in a lot of different ways. That's
for
really
opticians
cool.
as well, exactly. What are the other major storylines that you're following during the games?
We've got so many stories still to come, which is really, really good to see. On the track, are we going to see Andre De Grasse be able to find a way back onto the podium in the 100 meters? We've got Damian Warner in the decathlon trying to finally win an Olympic gold medal. Is this going to be his year? We just heard on the newscast, Canada's in an epic battle right now with Brazil. If they can somehow get through this, can the women's soccer team get back onto the medal? The list goes on and on every day with what we're still got in front of us. Here, we're only halfway through. It feels like forever ago that it just started. But that's what Olympic Games are all about. It's just story after story, not just for Canada, but internationally. There's amazing athletes all over the place doing amazing things in the most difficult of circumstances. No fans, COVID protocols. Their training has been off. Their competition schedule has been off. And yet we're seeing Olympic and world records. And to me, that's the biggest thing out of all of these Olympic Games we've seen so far and we'll see next week, is that these athletes are stepping up in the most amazing way. Great performances under trying conditions.
And last word to you, I have to ask you this before you go, because I know a lot of our listeners are tennis fans. Okay, tell me about tennis this weekend.
Novak Djokovic going for the Golden Slam today, knocked out by Sasha Zverev. Monster upset. Again, this is what the Olympics are all about. So that's as big an achievement as you can possibly have. Sasha Zverev, for the rest of his career, that's going to be pretty tough to beat as a highlight. What a stunner that was.
And it was. I'm still stunned. Ed, thank you for bringing us this.
Thanks for having me on.
Ed Kleiman is a freelance sports reporter. We all have our favorite pair of shoes or clothing to throw on when we want to be comfortable. Few of us these days are trying to be fashionable. I can certainly say that for myself. I'm on radio, but you come in early in the morning, you toss on whatever you can get. Now, some of those items are considered stylish. CBC's Jason Osler has more on the rise of ugly fashion.
It's one of the more polarizing pieces of footwear, and as CBC's Tom Power recently explained, they're having a moment.
They're known for being comfortable. Some people would argue that they're actually pretty ugly. However you feel about them, Crocs, those foam shoes with the holes in them, are actually pretty cool these days.
Pretty cool and making big money. The company reported record sales between April and June of this year, double the same period last year. Partnerships with designers and celebrities like Justin Bieber have helped make the clunky, colorful clogs popular again. But it's not the only reason, and Crocs are far from the only piece of so-called ugly fashion growing in popularity. Here's a recent clip from a radio program called This Morning, America's First News.
In the world of men's fashion, what was once mockable is now covetable, like Crocs. And now jorts, those frumpy jean shorts, have wormed their way into style.
Jorts are now selling well for brands like Levi's and even some higher-end designers. And there's more. A headline in the New York Times declared, "The original ugly sneaker is back," in reference to the renewed popularity of high-heeled wedge sneakers. This is all music to the ears of Winnipeg's John Rush. He's a former player for the CFL's Winnipeg Blue Bombers who's built a strong social media following where he likes to have fun talking fashion.
I post about it a lot. I love my Crocs. I love my jorts. I'm always kind of talking about it.
Rush has been rocking his jorts for 5 or 6 years and Crocs since they first came out 15 years ago. And he doesn't care what you think.
I'm comfortable. I think I look good. Some people might disagree, but I think I look good and I can just do my thing. If you're judging someone by what they wear, I don't think that's necessarily right.
Which is why he's delighted that his style is now in fashion.
I think it's awesome that people are owning it now and that they don't kind of care what other people think. And to finally get some recognition for all of the hate and backlash I've gotten for wearing Crocs all the time is it's nice. It's nice to be recognized for that.
But not everyone is on board.
It's probably one of the ugliest shoes ever created.
Leah Van Loon is a fashion stylist and image consultant in Calgary. She says despite her personal feelings on Crocs themselves, the rise of ugly fashion isn't surprising.
Fashion is not necessarily about being beautiful or being presentable. It's really about the zeitgeist in the moment, whatever is happening right now. And there are certain designers that are pushing things forward and pushing things into the mainstream. And that's what happened with Crocs.
However, Van Loon says this is about more than just designers pushing their concepts. Wearing what's comfortable became cool during the pandemic.
We've all had the opportunity to spend every day in elastic waist pants and soft t-shirts and not have to worry so much about the way things look. So it's like the perfect confluence between the irony of high fashion using it and the reality of people who want to be comfortable.
And that confluence of factors is something Van Loon thinks will stick as we return to some semblance of normal life.
The idea of Crocs being like something you might wear to work, I think you already see it. I'm totally here for people being comfortable and dressing to be comfortable. I think as long as you're putting some effort into it, it's really not a problem for me. But I can't imagine going back.
And neither can Crocs. The company increased its already rosy revenue forecast and now expects those revenues to rise by 65% for the rest of the year. For CBC Radio, I'm Jason Osler.
You're listening to Ontario Morning on CBC Radio 1. So glad you can be with us, even if it's to talk about ugly fashion. We're heard in Bancroft at 99.3 FM, in Brockville at 91.9 FM, and Cornwall at 95.5 FM. The time is 6:48. You can call my next guest the Elon Musk of the baby poultry fostering business. If that's a sector you haven't heard about, guess what? It's alive and well and operating out of Cavan Monaghan in Ontario. 15-year-old Drew McFadden is the owner of Drew's Chicks, a service that rents chicks to families who want to foster them for 2 weeks. He's one of 6 young entrepreneurs selected for the Summer Company program run by the Peterborough and Kawarthas Economic Development Unit. The Ontario government initiative helps youth aged 15 to 29 launch a business. Drew, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Describe exactly what you deliver to interested families.
So we deliver a small little kit that has everything that you'll need for the duration of time of 2 weeks. And of course, it's 2 cute little chicks.
And what else do you have in the kit to kind of help them out?
We have a tray for food and water, and then wood chips in there for bedding, and yeah.
So something complete so that they can do all, like it all comes in there. They don't have to go out and get things.
Correct. Yes, it's 100% complete.
Now, I hear this business has grown. How many chicks do you have now?
We have 60 chick kits that go out every 2 weeks. Wow. So we probably have, so total around our farm, we probably have 200 to 300 chickens.
I'm just trying to imagine the scenario there. So tell me how you got this started. I heard that you convinced your parents to get 2 chickens at a local fair. What then inspired you to start this business?
Well, my Uncle Lanny was one of our first customers, and he had the idea of he just wanted a few chicks just to have around his house, because at that time we were just trying to grow our flock out. So he kept them, and he thought it was a great idea, and he enjoyed having them. So me and my dad came up with an idea that this could start into a business, and that's really where the whole idea came from.
Was there a need that you were trying to address with the business?
Well, it was right when the shutdown of COVID happened. So we tried making people feel less lonely, but people also wanted the kits because they wanted to like show to their parents that they were responsible and they could look after it. So maybe like they were leaning towards like getting a dog or getting a cat or something like that.
So this is kind of like the starter pet, let's say.
Yeah, because there's no commitment or anything.
Now, full disclosure, I've actually rented 2 chicks from you, and they did bring my family a lot of joy. But I also had to wait on this really long wait list. What do you think explains why the idea has taken off?
Just something new, and there's a lot of people that want to learn more about like the farm life and get involved and test. There's a lot of people that don't realize there's 2 types of chickens too. So,
tell me about that.
So like there's egg-laying chickens and then there's meat birds. There's a lot of people that didn't know that. Everyone thought they were meat birds.
And which kind are the chicks that we get? I'm just finding this out now. Which kind of chicks do we get?
So we only have egg-laying here.
I will say, I cannot discount this. They were very adorable. I have to say that. So now you're part of this program. What does it mean to you to be selected for the summer company program?
It means a lot. Yeah, they've taught me a lot. It's very helpful. Yeah.
What are you learning? What have you found particularly helpful?
So it's a lot of information of like the behind the scenes of how you run a business. So like marketing and advertisement and like just running the business smoothly. Yeah.
Now, I'm sure that was it. Tell me the moment that you found out that you were part of the program. You know, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, it was pretty excited. Yeah, because it was really like the first program or anything like that I've been in, and I was like, this could be like the idea I have here of renting the chicks could really be something.
Now, there's so many other businesses that are closed during the summer, and young people have really struggled to find jobs. For teens, what would you say about, why would starting a business be a good alternative to getting a regular summer job?
Running your own business, you're like your own boss, so you can work whenever you want, get your stuff done. But in my case, I'm working pretty much at my house, so I don't need to drive or anywhere. Yeah, it's lots of freedom.
What do your friends make of this?
Well, I have a few friends that help me out. I got one that I have on the weekends. He helps me clean the coop and everything. But my friends think it's pretty cool, and yeah, it's definitely different.
What advice would you give other young people that are listening to this and thinking of starting a business?
It's definitely a lot of work, but if you have an idea, stick to it and definitely grow on it. Don't give up right away.
Drew, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Okay, thank you.
Drew McFadden is the owner of Drew's Chicks, a business based in Cavan, Monaghan. Now that we're in step 3 in Ontario, it seems like everything is allowed to open again, or at least open with some restrictions. But it turns out there's one type of business still not allowed to open in Ontario due to COVID-19 risk. The CBC's Hayden Waters has been looking into this for us and joins me now. Good morning, Hayden.
Good morning.
Okay, what is this one type of business not allowed to open in Ontario? I've been trying to Google this.
So before I spoil it, do you have any guesses?
I went through a whole bunch. I was like, it can't be dentists, it can't be salons, it can't be because all of these are things that I've managed to sort of sneak in over the next while. So I thought perhaps maybe saunas?
Yeah, I thought it would be a public sauna or a steam room too, maybe a hookah bar, but all those are allowed to open right now. The only type of business not allowed to open in the province currently is oxygen bars. When you pull up a chair to this futuristic looking device, you plug a tube in your nose and then you just breathe in oxygen. You may have seen it maybe at a convention or a trade show. People do it for relaxation and health benefits like muscle and hangover recovery. Those have been disputed though. Everything else is allowed to open right now, some under restrictions like capacity limits, but you can't have oxygen bars at all. The exclusion has left some oxygen bar owners confused and feeling singled out. Julie Baker runs an oxygen bar as part of her business, Gold Tan and Sunset Spa on the border of Mississauga and Oakville.
We have a big close sign and none of the lights turn on. It looks a little sad, but that's how it has to remain. But it's unfortunate because it is one of the first things you see when you walk into the location. We're allowed to do facials now, which is a one-on-one service where the person has to take their mask off, but they're not allowed to sit alone by themselves and intake oxygen by themselves. We don't obviously really understand it. We haven't been told really why either.
She says she wrote to her public health unit asking questions, but she hasn't heard back any answers just yet or a timeline about when she'll be allowed to reopen the oxygen bar.
Why did the province make this decision?
The Ministry of Health told me oxygen bars are high risk for COVID-19 transmission, and that risk can't be lessened by putting additional precautions or measures into place. It wouldn't give me more than that, so I turned to a public health doc to get their take on it. Dr. Rebecca Shalansky is a fourth-year public health and preventative medicine resident at the University of Toronto.
COVID is a respiratory virus, so it's shared by droplet and some aerosol transmission. And so in an oxygen bar, you're actually directly putting almost 100% oxygen, so a type of air, into your nose. And so with a respiratory virus, if you're putting something directly into your respiratory system, that would be a high-risk transmission situation.
You may imagine there's not a lot of studies out there on COVID-19 transmission and oxygen bars, so Dr. Shalansky thinks the province is probably erring on the side of caution here. She would want to see a very low amount of COVID cases and a very high vaccination rate before allowing oxygen bars to open again.
Is this just an Ontario thing? Are oxygen bars closed in other places too?
I asked every province and territory, all but New Brunswick got back to me, and only Manitoba is not letting oxygen bars be used either. I learned none of the three territories even have oxygen bars, at least not that they know of, so perhaps an business opportunity there. Ontario's oxygen bar ban is a surprise to Rick McVicker. He's out in Burnaby, British Columbia, where he runs an oxygen bar company called Second Wind, and sits on the board of the Recreational Oxygen Association of North America, or RONA for short. He's got questions for our province.
If they know something that I don't, I'd love to be able to hear from them to find out what it is that they know that I don't, because we need to implement that into our safety plan.
McVicker developed the safety plan when he was inside staying home last year, covering cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, physical distancing, and putting up plexiglass barriers. It's worth noting the tubes you stick in your nose are replaceable, so you aren't using the same ones as other people do.
Do you have a sense of how many people are impacted by the ban?
This is, like, I would say, the hardest part to figure out. No one seems to keep a running list of all the oxygen bars in Ontario or how many people they employ. I asked the province, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. I even reached out to all 34 health units in the province to see if they had any oxygen bars in their jurisdiction. Most did not or weren't aware of them. A few admitted they were just Googling to see if there were local oxygen bars. I was able to confirm none of the health units have further business closures beyond the province's ban on oxygen bars, though.
Are there standalone oxygen bars?
Not that I could find in Ontario. They largely operate as parts of other businesses in spas, tanning salons. There was one in a nightclub in London, Ontario. These places are now allowed to be open, just not the oxygen bar portion. Spencer Smith runs Immerse Wellness Center in Kingston. He feels lucky to be open for other things like float therapy, but he's confused why he can't open his oxygen bar too.
I feel like that's the nice safety net that the government kind of lies in a lot of the time, right? Where it's better to play it over safe than to look for a better tomorrow. So I hate to say it, but I feel like the government's a little backwards on a lot of things right now. And there's a lot of hands and papers up in the air with everything going on.
When this is all said and done, will you be hooking up to the oxygen bar yourself?
Oh, well, that's the joys of being a business owner. Who's to say I'm not hooked up right now on this little camera, right?
Smith says it has hurt his business, it is hurting his business, yet finds irony in the whole thing. COVID patients are put on oxygen in a hospital, yet he's not allowed to let people use his oxygen bar. Yes, he knows it's two very, very different circumstances, and his is non-medical, but still. For now, he's hauled his oxygen bar into storage. It's gathering dust, he tells me. He doesn't have an idea about when he'll be allowed to use it again. I asked the Ministry of Health for a timeline, but they've yet to get back to me.
Oh, this is something really quite interesting to watch. I would never have guessed that, by the way.
That's good. And there we go. I did a little tease there. Yeah. It's good to know.
Thanks for that, Hayden.
Thanks for having me.
That's the CBC's Hayden Waters, reporter for Ontario CBC stations. This Sunday is August 1st. It's a date that some parts of the world already recognize as Emancipation Day. It was on August 1st in 1834 that slavery was abolished throughout the British Empire. And this year will be the first time Canada officially recognizes the day as a national holiday. Rosemary Sadler is the founder of the Black Canadian Network and the former president of the Ontario Black History Society. She began spearheading the campaign for Canada to recognize Emancipation Day back in 1995. Rosemary, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
A pleasure. 1995, that's more than 2 decades ago. How much of a journey has it been for you getting to this point?
It's been a real, quite amazing journey, actually. It started out relatively easily, but there were so many hiccups along the way. So come March 24th, 2021, when it was finally passed as a unanimous commemoration across Canada, piggybacking on days that people already celebrate as a holiday, it was really such a joy to know that it was now a time for all Canadians to think about freedom perhaps in a different way.
Now, before now, Emancipation Day was only recognized in Ontario. I know you're being modest. You also led the campaign to have it recognized in the province. What did that mean for you to have this date officially commemorated countrywide?
I was absolutely shocked, to be honest. I mean, it had come close several times. It had gone to second reading nationally in 1999 and in 2000 and, a couple of years ago in the Senate and in the House. So who knew that it would actually go through this time? And as I watched the vote come through and it was unanimous, I was really touched. I mean, it really did bring tears to my eyes. And even though it's a motion and not a bill, it's still an important commemoration, an important demarcation in this country, especially now when there's so much time to give consideration to a better future.
Yeah, and that's what was crossing my mind. I mean, last year we saw the police killing of George Floyd and rallies supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. How do these events inflect the meaning of Emancipation Day this year?
I think it makes it even more compelling and more touching. For the past year and a half, we have all been in lockdown or had our usual way of living and being impacted by so many factors that were beyond our control. We've all spent time really thinking about what's important to us. And I think that this combined health and racial pandemic really makes, I think, everybody more interested and open to considering making the changes that will encourage and make it possible for all of us to have not just freedom, but a better life. And when we make things better for the people who are the most challenged or disadvantaged by circumstances or systems, then it ultimately makes things better for us all.
Talk to me about the challenges. What do you see as the greatest challenges facing Black people in Canada today?
Well, even though we may not make up the majority population in any particular area, we somehow as a community find ourselves having inferior access to health care or having issues related to impairments, for example, in terms of getting hired, being recruited, or being able to move forward in our careers. Students are sometimes streamed or not able to get into the professional schools that they're looking to get into because the streaming puts them into programs that are not university bound. And of course, we do have racial profiling, and there are certain communities or individuals who find that they are stopped and street-checked or profiled when there wouldn't seem to necessarily be a reason for doing so. And frankly, one of the most startling statistics is that 70% of civilian deaths are among the Black community, those that are affected by the police.
So let's get to talking about change and what you would like to see. What needs to change, you think, to put the country on a path to ending racial injustice experienced by Black people?
I think we have to acknowledge that there is systemic racism. We have to acknowledge that there is anti-Black racism. And I think that we, yes, have to look towards government for some of the solutions, but we also have to look at ourselves for some of the solutions. The fact that we have Emancipation Day, I think that's not a perfect example, but an example. I initiated the idea of formally recognizing the day. I'm an individual. I help to affect a change. The government has seen fit to support that. And there are other things that individuals can put forward, and the government can see fit to support as well. And so that's why the advantage. So, in education, we need to see more Black teachers, and in employment, we need to see people go beyond their usual Rolodex, and we need people to approach things, police training, for example, in many areas of our society with an anti-Black racism lens. And we can look at University of Toronto and how they have recently instituted a Black student application program for their medical school, which has increased the participation of people of African descent in that area.
So, Rosemary, let's get talking about Sunday. What are some things people can do to commemorate Emancipation Day?
In terms further to their own reflection about what commitments and changes they will be following through on, they can certainly watch Free Up, the Emancipation Day special, which will be broadcast on CBC GEM at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And, of course, there's also the Emancipation Day Celebration of Freedom, which will be broadcast on YouTube Live 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And they should check their local area to see what wonderful events are taking place there.
What are you going to be doing on Sunday?
Definitely, I'm going to be celebrating. I'm definitely going to be starting the day reflecting on my mother, my father, my ancestors, and the resilience and what they have left me. And after some of that mindfulness, I will be involved in as many activities, and some of which I'm part of, as I possibly can be.
Oh, that sounds delightful. Thank you for making the time to take us through that and speaking with us this morning.
Thank you so much, and happy Emancipation Day.
To you as well. Rosemary Sadler is the founder of the Black Canadian Network and the former president of the Ontario Black History Society. I don't know if you remember this disaster of a festival that everyone was talking about a few years back, the Fire Festival. What was supposed to be this huge 3-day luxury party in the Bahamas became a viral fiasco. But long before the Fire Festival, there was a literal festival on fire. It was called Woodstock 1999.
In pop culture, there's this dark energy coming from young white males that entertainment is perpetuating.
You have the crowd who are excited, inebriated, and you give them a band to help them release that energy. What do you think's gonna happen?
That's from the HBO documentary Woodstock 99, Peace, Love and Rage. Our Screen Time columnist, Di Golding, is here to tell us all about it, along with another recommendation for the week, a new action film. She's a film and television critic. Di, hello.
Hello.
Well, that sounds very captivating. Woodstock 99 is remembered best, perhaps, for all the worst reasons. Can you give us a quick refresher on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with the original Woodstock in 1969, which became famous as the 3-day Peace, Love, and Music Festival in upstate New York, tended by more than 400,000 people and defined an era for the hippie baby boomer generation, which endures to this day. And then 25 years later, Woodstock 94 took place, featuring current musical acts of the day and performers from the 69 Woodstock era. There were no fires, no brown acid. Apparently a good time was had by all. Now you skip 5 years to the last weekend of July 1999, and now Woodstock is determined to be a profit-making brand. They take over a retired airfield in Rome, New York, and set up for an even bigger and better festival, but a lot had changed in those 5 years. The music and media of the era seemed to be geared towards the young white male demographic, who in turn had been labeled and marketed to as aggressive and entitled, disaffected young men. Now that's already a powder keg ready to go off. And then you factor in the domino effect of bad decisions and rampant greed just escalating, and many of their favorite musicians feeding off that energy and igniting the rage of 200,000 of them packed together like livestock. I mean, what could go wrong? If you've read Lord of the Flies, you probably already know.
Oh, yes, I have. How did things go off the rails so quickly?
Manjula, this is one of those docs that lays out how, in retrospect, it's very easy to see just how many red flags there were and how many bad choices led to the mayhem. So here's a few of the issues. The venue was a giant asphalt tarmac on a sweltering 38-degree weekend with nowhere to seek shade and very little grass to camp on. Many of the people hired as security ghosted on the first day, leaving the venue woefully unprepared. Basic necessities like water, working toilets, and showers were scarce and then quickly became unusable. Hot dogs were $10. The east and west stages were over 2 miles apart, and there was a rave tent going 24 hours a day, but water was selling for $4 a bottle in 1999. And not coincidentally, the venue was selling beer for $4. So which do you think young people were drinking, right? So you've got dehydration, sunstroke, drug and alcohol poisoning, rampant sexual assaults taking place. Bad things are going to happen. As we heard in the intro, how could it not? So by the last night, what began as a music festival became a complete breakdown of society. Merchandise was looted and destroyed. Fires were set by candles handed out at the beginning of the festival by a group there to commemorate Columbine. I mean, you can't write this stuff.
Oh, wow, that is quite a lot. Do you think the documentary makes the case that Woodstock 99 was a reflection of what was going on culturally at that time?
Well, it certainly makes the case for the kind of toxic masculinity, misogyny, and homophobia that were almost championed in the era of the Clinton impeachment scandal, Columbine, Girls Gone Wild, Nu Metal, Napster, Fight Club, Y2K. It was just this, there was these deep wells of impotent rage directed outwards. And like the best documentaries, the filmmakers really let the interview subjects hoist themselves by their own petard, which is much more fun to say than to do. The Woodstock founders were unrepentant about how things went down. We also hear from some of the performers, the first responders, and the attendees who are rather frank about their experiences and the participation in some of the mayhem. Now, the film certainly makes a compelling case for how the cultural phenomenon of entitled white rage has deep roots. And perhaps what we saw take seed in the previous generation has blossomed into something few of us could have predicted in 2021. But it's also interesting to note that another music festival got off the ground in 1999 in Indio, California, which we now know as Coachella, and they gave out water for free.
What a contrast. Well, you've convinced
Right?
me. I'm going to put this on the watch list for sure.
Excellent.
Now, switching gears to a different recommendation for this weekend. An action film currently on Netflix about a young assassin on the run with an orphan?
Sam, you killed the wrong people. You're no longer under our protection. Some bad men are coming to hurt us.
We have to go where it's safe. Hi, Mom.
That's from the Netflix film Gunpowder Milkshake. What a name. What can you tell us about it?
Well, this is kind of in direct contrast to the Woodstock documentary. It's a slick, stylish, campy revenge flick centered on female rage, justified female rage. And the hero is Sam, a young assassin raised by and employed by the firm, who once employed her own mother 15 years before she disappeared. Now Sam finds herself on the wrong side of the firm with an orphaned 8-year-old, and she seeks the help of her mother and her friends to take them down. So we heard Karen Gillan in the clip. She plays Sam, who is also best known as playing Nebula in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And then Lena Headey from Game of Thrones plays her mother. We also heard Paul Giamatti's voice. We've got people like Angela Bassett, Michelle Yeoh, Carla Gugino. I mean, you got the makings of a tasty milkshake right there.
Wow, that sounds incredible. Thank you, Di.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
That was film and television critic Di Golding with this week's Screen Time column, filling in for Eli Glasner. Hundreds of thousands of snails are washing up on the shores of Ontario lakes, and tens of thousands more are being removed by volunteers in Muskoka and elsewhere. They are called, and I'm not making this up, mystery snails. What we do know about these alien invaders is that they are a non-native species threatening the ecosystem. Brooke Schreier is the aquatic program specialist with the Invading Species Awareness Program, which is coordinated by the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. And he joins me this morning. Hello, Brock.
Good morning. And just for the record, Mac, I really enjoyed your weather report there. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Sorry, I should say Brooke. My apologies. Well, Mac that's a nice compliment. I'll tell you, because you can't see him, Brooke. He is smiling finally. So.
I'm so honored.
So how long have these mystery snails been here in Ontario?
So, it's funny because they've been here for decades, which is usually the case with many invasive species. But, in the invasive species world, as you know, they kind of fly under the radar. So oftentimes people just might not recognize them, or maybe it just doesn't get the attention that it deserves. But, this year it's been a particularly bad year and good year. Bad year in terms of how many snails have been found, but a good year in how many people are on the landscape looking and reporting, these amazing photos of tens of thousands of snails that they're working to remove. So they've been here for, like I said, a number of decades. In terms of North America, they've actually both been here since the 1800s. So they've been here quite some time.
What's interesting, it could be because snails don't instigate this feeling of foreign. You feel like, oh, there's another snail. They feel very normal.
Absolutely. And, it's funny because I've said that so many times where, they're not the giant hogweeds of the world. They're not something that you see and go, whoa, what is that? Normally, if you see a snail, you're probably thinking, oh, that's fantastic. There's some, native wildlife. But in reality, just the densities that these things reach on shorelines, it should be disconcerting for folks just because they really affect their ability to really enjoy their property.
How damaging are they to local ecosystems?
So, in terms of their impacts, these two species that we're talking about first of all, they reproduce very quickly, right? So we're talking, you'll have a handful of snails one year, then you'll have thousands the next year because they can have upwards of 100 offspring every single year. So what that means is that they're reproducing at a rate that is outcompeting our native species. So, native snails just, as you know, will need resources. They need space. But when you have, conservative estimates of hundreds of thousands of snails in a single water body, that leaves very little resources for other species of snails, let alone, when you have to consider the other resources that are being taken out of the ecosystem for other species.
Now, you've mentioned the density at certain spots. What do you mean? How dense does this get?
So I've seen estimates, by people like the U.S. Geological Survey that say that they can reach densities of in the 800 per square meter of lake bottom. So you're talking in a 3 foot by 3 foot square up to 800 snails that are basically 2 to 4 centimeters long. Those are the banded mystery snails. Whereas the Chinese mystery snails, they're a little bit less. You'll notice probably about 5 to 10 per square meter of lake bottom. But still, these things just reach these massive densities. And then when they go through these die-off events, they wash up on shores. They're unsightly. They affect recreation. You don't want to send your kids or your grandkids out to go swimming because then they're stepping on these shells. So they really affect the enjoyment of property, and they also really affect our ecosystems and our native species.
Now, I heard from a colleague that they're also stinky when they die. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, because when you consider the densities at which they're dying off, you know, if you have thousands of snails on your shoreline that all sort of die off at the same time and begin to decompose on a hot summer day, yes, it makes the smell quite unbearable. And that's why what we're trying to do through this project is give people the tools to try to address this problem, right? You know, we do require a permit in order to remove these snails, as we should, you know. Even though they're invasive, we want to make sure that we're protecting Ontario's native wildlife. So we've trained, you know, close to 300 volunteers who are out in the Haliburton region of Ontario, which is the front line for this invasive species in that region. And, you know, just giving them the tools to identify and make sure that they're not misidentifying native species and to remove these snails from their shorelines and doing it legally.
Now, that is a sizable volunteer effort, by the way. How motivated is this network of volunteers?
Well, so we have a Facebook group where, you know, I'm kind of the lead expert in identification. If I ever get into a point where I can't identify a snail, I'll actually refer to other experts. I've even sent photos to Chicago to a curator at an invertebrate, you know, part of the museum who was able to help me with some snail identification. They are so engaged. They are, you know, first of all, giving up their Saturdays to receive training. They have to have the permit on them at all times when they're out doing the work. They have to obviously keep in mind that the world is a very strange place right now with COVID and respect social distancing, but also not like allowing something like that to stop them from protecting their shorelines and protecting their environments. You know, one volunteer has actually reached out to me and she's gotten lots of media attention. She herself has actually, with conservative estimates, removed between 120 and 160,000 mystery snails on her own.
Whoa. Oh my, what a star.
Oh, she is. And I'm actually planning an event. I'm going to be going out to her location to assist. I'm going to be getting in the water and, you know, obviously with all sorts of COVID protocols in place, but to assist her in removing snails, because she's dealing with a huge amount of abandoned mystery snails on our shoreline.
Now, I know that people are going to be out and about this weekend. We're going to need a description. How do these look? How different are they from snails that are native to Ontario?
So I'm not going to lie to you, it is quite hard to differentiate. But the main things to look for is, so if you see a snail in the water, first of all, if you see large densities of snails, that's usually uncharacteristic of our native species. So that should be a signal right away. But if you don't forget that these are both aquatic species, so they're going to be in the water or on shorelines. They're not going to be in your garden or on land. So if you see a banded mystery snail, it's usually about 2 to 4 centimeters long, and you're going to notice very distinct dark brown bands on it. And just as an aside, I'd really encourage folks to go to our website, which is invadingspecies.com, because we have web pages dedicated to helping people identify these species, as well as resources to help them identify these species. So look for those distinct bands, right? That's the main thing that you're going to see on the banded mystery snail. Now, with the Chinese mystery snail, it's more about its size and its shape. It's more like a golf ball in terms of its overall size and appearance. It's very, it's just almost like a little ball. But they're usually between 2 and 6.5 centimeters long, so quite large.
That's
very
big.
Large in terms
6.5 is big.
Yeah, it's 6.5 centimeters is quite large for a snail. So if you see a snail that's uncharacteristically large and the shape of a golf ball, dark brown, you probably have a Chinese mystery snail.
Oh my! Well, this is quite new. You learn something new every day. Thank you for speaking with us about this, Brooke.
Hey, no problem at all. And just again to reiterate, if people ever encounter an invasive species, that they can report them to us at 1-800-563-7711, or they can also report online at www.eddmaps.org.
Thank you, Brooke. Brooke Schreier is the Aquatic Program Specialist with the Invading Species Awareness Program, which is coordinated by the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.